my top-level expert legal analysis of the affidavit is, why ain't this dude in jail? Like, what does this man have to do to go to jail? President Sticky Fingers already stole classified documents. How is this man free?
All right, that was MSNBC This Weekend trotting out Elie Mystal for what he's calling his top-level expert legal analysis on the FBI raid. But with so many pages of the affidavit left redacted, is it a little soon to be calling for jail time? Let's bring in someone who actually knows what they're talking about. Joining me now is Harvard Law School professor emeritus and Newsmax analyst and the author of the book, The Price of Principle, Alan Dershowitz. Professor, I don't, as you know, have a law degree. I do watch a lot of Law and Order. I don't understand how anybody who's been to law school, like this gentleman considers himself some kind of expert, could say, why is he still not in jail? He hasn't even been charged with a crime.
Well, you think that's a problem? How about Professor Lawrence Tribe, who taught constitutional law at Harvard for 50 years, who says that Donald Trump should be in jail for attempting to murder Pence? Probably the dumbest statement any law professor has ever made. It's part of the Get Trump movement, which is the new McCarthyism. The old McCarthyism, in order to get communists, you could do anything. You could trash the Constitution, violate the Fifth Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment. That's what the Get Trump people are all about. That's what MSNBC is about. That's what the New York Times is about. That's what CNN is about. The ends justify the means. Look, I have read every word, every unredacted word of the affidavit, and I come to several conclusions. One, there was probable cause based on the allegations in the affidavit. Two, the warrant was far too broad. It didn't limit itself with specificity the way the Fourth Amendment says it should. Three, there's no justification whatsoever for having issued a search warrant. There's nothing in the unredacted portions of the affidavit which suggests any urgency. They could have gotten a search warrant 4 months ago. They could have acted on the search warrant the minute they got it. Instead, they waited 2 days. And then the fourth thing is, although technically there is probably enough in there to indict for a violation of classified material or a violation of some of the other provisions involving the archives, no reasonable prosecutor would indict a not only former president, but a future presidential candidate based on these technical violations. I think it was a South American dictator who once said, "For my friends, everything. For my enemies, the law." And that's what these people are trying to do, apply the law to him. For there to be a criminal investigation even, but certainly a criminal indictment, it has to satisfy two tests. One I call the Richard Nixon test and the other the Hillary Clinton test. The Richard Nixon test is there has to be bipartisan support. You don't have a Democratic attorney general going after a Republican candidate for president unless it's so overwhelming that Republicans join, as they did with Richard Nixon. And second, you have to justify why is this case different from the Hillary Clinton case. So unless those two standards are met, there should not be an indictment, even though there is technically probably enough to have indicted Hillary Clinton and to have indicted Donald Trump. It's as easy to get an indictment as somebody once said to indict a ham sandwich. So that shouldn't be the standard.
So, you know, you brought up the Hillary Clinton standard, and I remember when Comey gave that infamous press conference, and he said that he didn't think anyone would ever prosecute it. A lot of folks on the left keep saying, well, this is a very different case than Hillary Clinton, even though she had stuff on that secret server that I would assume is a lot more vulnerable to attack. But from a legal standpoint, is there any difference between what Hillary Clinton did and Donald Trump, pro or con?
Well, there probably are, because we haven't seen the whole redacted affidavit. There may well be. But remember, Hillary Clinton not only had material on her home server, it ended up on Anthony Weiner's computer. And again, we don't know what was on that computer, but it was far more vulnerable than anything that was in Mar-a-Lago. So I think if there is going to be an indictment, the Attorney General has to justify the difference between that case, this case, between Sandy Berger, where there was a plea and a slap on the wrist financial fine. So it should be very difficult to indict a future presidential candidate who is running against your incumbent who appointed you. That has to achieve an extremely high standard if the American public is going to accept it. If there were an indictment today based on what's in that affidavit, the unredacted portions of the affidavit, it would just divide the country even more than it's divided today.
So I want to get to this thing, this special master issue. Trump requested a special master to independently oversee the documents. And on Saturday, a district court judge signaled that she was likely to appoint one and gave the Department of Justice a deadline of tomorrow to file a more in-depth inventory of what they took. But today, the Department of Justice came out saying, well, it already reviewed the documents and identified only a, quote, limited set that might potentially deal with attorney-client privilege. Can you explain, A, what that means, and B, what having a special master would do to this?
What this means, the Justice Department says, trust us, we're the government. We've looked it over and we don't find this privilege. Trust us, we're the government. And they claim what they do is they divide prosecutors into two groups. One, the taint team, which will never, under any circumstances, tell the prosecution team, even with an wink or a nod. And as a defense attorney, I think I speak for many defense attorneys, we don't trust that. We don't trust the Justice Department to monitor itself. Who will guard the guardians? An independent master is much, much better, not part of the prosecution team. The material never gets to the prosecutor if this master, she or he, the last one that was appointed was a former judge, a woman, and she went through everything in the Cohen case. That's the way it should go. The Justice Department can't be trusted. That's as simple as that. To do an independent analysis. Remember, it's an ex parte analysis. The other side doesn't get to say a word. So the independent analysis should be done by an independent monitor. Trump is right in this regard.
So you think that he will get a special master?
I hope so. I think so. This judge seems to be inclined, but, you know, maybe the Justice Department will persuade her. They haven't persuaded me based on what they said today, but tomorrow.
And then who chooses the special master? Who would choose that special master?
The judge. The judge will choose the master, and it's usually a former judge. It could be a former justice of the Supreme Court, David Souter. It could be Steve Breyer. Could be a former judge, a former president of a university or dean of a law school, somebody who has no connection with the prosecutors in the current Justice Department. That's the essential point, a complete separation between the prosecutors.
So he thinks, Trump thinks that benefits him, right?
Well, I don't know if it'll benefit him or not. It depends on what's in the material, but the process is the right. The process is an independent, objective one, rather than one part of the Justice Department making decisions for the other part of the Justice Department. Of course, they're going to lean over backwards to help their fellow prosecutors who they have lunch with every day.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I have read a lot of reports, including one in the New York Times, that say the following. Mr. Trump is going into the battle over the documents with a hastily assembled team, that meaning his legal team. The legal arguments put forth by his team sometimes strike lawyers not involved in the case as more about setting a political narrative than about dealing with the possibility of a federal prosecution. Some of the Trump lawyers' efforts have also appeared ineffective or misdirected. Is that the media trying to create a narrative to undermine his team, or do you share concerns about the caliber of his legal team?
I share concerns. Look, I'm not going to second guess a lawyer. There are some very good lawyers. I can tell you that 6 lawyers so far have called me and have said, we will not defend Trump, even though we'd like to, because of what happened to you, Alan Dershowitz, because you have been canceled. You can't speak at various places. You can't speak in your own library. People won't speak to you. People are furious at you. I had a lawyer say to me, I just don't want to be Dershowitz. I've become a verb. And there was a deliberate attempt to try to cancel me because I defended President Trump in order to send a message, and it's been successful, to other lawyers not to go near the case. It's pure McCarthyism of the left, and it should not be tolerated or accepted. That's why I wrote my book, The Price of Principle. I want to explain to people what a heavy price you have to pay for being a principled constitutional lawyer who doesn't support Trump politically. And I want to give people the ammunition to fight back against cancellation. That's what I try to do in my book, The Price of Principle.
Well, as always, it's a great read, and your legal insight is invaluable. So Buy the book. It's cheaper than a Harvard education. Professor Dershowitz, good to see you.
Thank you so much.